So when we talk about prosthesis, the first thing that come up to our mind is essentially, for example, orthopedic prosthesis, where bone is replaced by inorganic material to restore function of the bone in degeneration, for example. What about brain? Can we do the same thing about with the degeneration of portion of the brain, of neuronal networks in the brain, or injury? Yeah. Of course, this is a very provocative question, and this sounds like science fiction, but this is actually what we want to do, what we want to prove, at least as a proof of principle in the Synch project, which is founded by the European Commission and is coordinated by myself at the University of Padua. So in practice, what we want to do is to use artificial neuronal networks that are implemented on a microchip, so electronic neuronal networks at the nanoscale, and we want to create a neuroprosthesis that is using these artificial neuronal networks to restore function in the brain where we have induced a deficit. It is, of course, very important to first prove that it is possible to let biological and artificial neurons communicate. And this is exactly what we did in this first publication that was recently published in the Nature Scientific Report. We used a model in vitro where neurons, biological neurons from the rat brain were cultured in Padua and where activity was recorded from these neurons. So neuronal activity in terms of impulses, spikes, was sent actually to the artificial neurons on chip and vice versa. So we established a communication. But the very important point here is that we also were able to emulate what is synaptic transmission. So synapses are, as you know, those elements that are responsible for the transmission of impulses from one neuron to the other, and also not only transmission, but also they are responsible for computation, of processing of these impulses. And that's exactly what we did. So we used nanoscale electronic elements, actually memristors, to emulate synapses. So we use memristors to establish a synapse-inspired connection between biological neurons and artificial neurons, and between vice versa, artificial neurons and biological neurons. In practice, this is another curious element in our work, and that's we established this network, an elementary network of 3 neurons, hybrid network, through the internet. So impulses that were generated by biological neurons were sent through the internet to the synaptic elements, and again through the internet to the artificial neurons and back. So we established, in other words, an elementary little brain distributed across Europe. In practice, we had the biological neurons in Padua, the synapses in the UK, and the artificial neurons in Switzerland, and they were communicating each other in this simple network. So this is a first important step, because the 2 new type of neurons, biological and artificial, were communicating by synapse-inspired connections. And this is a first, then, important step towards the goal, so which is to build these neuroprosthetic devices that we hope will be useful for patients in the future after, of course, still much work is needed to treat important neurological diseases.